Moin moin. Before we start this episode of Who Actually Is, I will inform you that this episode is also sponsored by Brian Brown Knives. Brian Brown Knives, your stop for your Raptor, Yeager, or even the X1 by Civivi Knives. And now, have fun listening to Who Actually Is, Brian Brown Knives. Moin moin and a dear welcome to another episode of Tim's Sprachnachrichten, or for you English-speaking people out there, Tim's voicemails. And today I have a very, very special guest for me, and that is Brian Brown of Brian Brown Knives. Hello, Brian. Dear welcome.
Oh, hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm very, very fine, or good, I have to say, because I'm really excited for this interview since I sent you, or since we first started contacting.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, it's an honor to have you on. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I like your photos, your Instagram posts. I'll be honest, I've not listened to one of your podcasts yet, but I do enjoy seeing people's pictures and happy to see. It's really exciting for me to have people, on the other end of the world that love my work and want to buy it and talk with me and learn more about me. Just, like I said, on the other side of the world. It's kind of crazy.
Straight across the pond, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah. I just have to say, your Yeager model was the model that got me going for Warncliffe blades.
Sure.
Because first I wasn't that much into Warncliffe, but as I got my first Yeager, I understood how I should use a Warncliffe blade, right?
Sure.
So for me, Warncliffe, and that's always the Yeager. If somebody asks me what's your favorite Warncliffe blade or knife, I always have to say Yeager.
Yeah, it was honestly kind of the same with me. Is I never carried a Warncliffe blade. I never really looked to find any early on. I didn't even expect the popularity around the Yeager to end up being what it's been. And I've talked about this a little bit before, is that was going to be my first folding knife design, because I had made fixed blades for a few years.
Okay.
And my Taka model, which is a Tonto, was the most popular fixed blade design.
Oh, okay.
The Warncliffe was kind of, the Yeager was kind of like, well, I want to figure out what I'm doing with the whole folder thing first before I dive off into, my most popular model. And I'm not trying to sell it short, as in, this was just a placeholder kind of thing, but it was just kind of well, this is my favorite model as well, so let's make something new to start with. And so that's where the Yeager came from.
Oh, okay.
And it just, even before the production stuff, it did incredibly well for me with the, only customs. And initially, when I had first taken my early on orders, that was the only model I had as far as a custom folder. It was that early on. And, as time has gone on, obviously I've got a lot more models now, but, it just one of those things that just turned into something I never expected.
So one could say the Yeager is a real BBK evergreen, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Understandably so, yeah.
Sure. And it's definitely become what I'm known for in the world, in the knife world,
Yeah, definitely.
Like I said, with just the production runs I've done now, having the dealer over there in Germany, that helps obviously for you guys over there. But just having a company, a dealer, want to sell my stuff overseas, it's crazy to me how I don't like to say how I've expanded, because I didn't do anything over there. I'm just selling them to somebody, but just how how just that one model has opened so many doors for me, essentially worldwide now.
It's because it's such a simple but iconic design, right? There's not much going on, but a total amount of going on, right? Because in its category, it stands out. And for me, when I flip it, the sound it makes, right, in the V3 version, the high-pitched pling, even if you close it, the high-pitched pling, right? It's just, I love it. I just enjoy it so much. Definitely one of my all-time favorites.
Well, thank you. That you know, the V2, whenever I started using React for the production, and they did that really tall, aggressive hollow grind. Like I originally had wanted with Wii, they just, back then, Wii was still pretty newish as far as doing OEM work, and they were good, but React came out the gate, and React was just blowing the Wii stuff away back then. The main reason I swapped was because we wanted me to do like 600 whenever I wanted multiple variations. I wanted 2 handle variations, 2 blade variations. They wanted 600 units total, and I wasn't comfortable with that as a second run because the first run was only 150 of that model. And they did well. But we wanted that many, and then I had already had contact with somebody at React, just, you know, kind of, hey, in the future kind of thing. So I reached out to them, and they said, yeah, sure. Well, I had asked for the hollow grind. They forgot to do the hollow grind on the prototype. So I actually have a prototype React, essentially the V2 in a flat grind.
Oh, wow.
And it's not near as cool. Like, if you look at it, I should probably put a picture of it again. It's been a long time, but if you look at it, you just look at it like, that looks weird. It does not look right with that flat grind on it. And so
I can imagine.
I didn't even ask them to do a second prototype. I just kind of went off of their word and the quality that they were already becoming known for, that they were going to do it and do a good job at it. And so when they showed up and I first opened the box and saw those big, deep hollow grinds, I was just ecstatic with how they looked. And I was like, this is it. And I had gotten some pictures during, you know, the production process and stuff. But when I don't know if React's dialed something in from the V2s to the V3s, but even all the V2s I did, it was kind of a hit and miss with that ping, with that ting noise. And all the V3s since, almost all of them have that high pitched ring to them. And the best I can figure out, it's just that big tall hollow grind on the blade and
I would say so.
Steel variations, because almost all the VanX do it. I'm wondering if the VanX, just the properties in the steel affect the sound more than the M390. I don't know. I've not been able to find any rhyme or reason to it. But, you know, like I said, I'm not complaining, and you know, that's almost a selling point on the knife, because people love it. And people buy them and sell them secondary market, saying, "Hey, this one makes noise."
I mean, if you look at the back of the knife, when the blade sits in the handle, and you have this absolute contrast between the lines of the scales, and between them sits this aggressive hollow grind.
Right.
It's one of my favorite perspectives of the knife, and then the sound. That's just iconic, right? So I said, a good friend of mine is sometimes he shares pictures he takes of his gear, and asks me, "Hey man, do you have some ideas how I can rearrange the picture or the stuff, and what can I change or what can I adapt?" And then we played around a bit, and then he came to this bouquet shot with his watch in front, behind that the Yeager, exactly in this perspective with the focus on the blade sitting in the handle. And then I said to him, okay, and now you write under it, POV, your knife got that trunk. And that just hits it for me, right?
That's funny. He posted, was that last week?
This week, I guess.
This week,
But
yeah.
Was it last week?
Because I think I can. Yeah. I see the shot in my mind from seeing it on the post the other day. But yeah, it was a very good shot. I think I even shared it. That one. But yeah, it's just so funny with you were talking about just the overall profile of this thing being so simple. It's a Wharncliffe, which is already usually a boxy looking blade.
Yeah.
And then, for the handle to fit and to have clean lines and not a lot of excess handle at the butt of the knife, obviously the butt's going to follow the line of the blade when it's closed. Mm-hmm. And so you essentially almost have just a blocky handle with a couple little finger choils, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it was that's kind of what's always made me laugh a little bit about the popularity of this is how simple it is and how just unique of a blade it is in the fact that there's not that many just random production Wharncliffes out there. And like I said, I didn't design that thing initially trying to fill a hole in the market. I didn't realize it until after I had designed it, started selling them. That like, really, there's really no like cool Wharncliffes out there, and so
no, there is.
There is. Yeah, and I think it was just kind of one of those things that happened. I didn't, like I said, I didn't plan it, and I found a hole in the market for a just aggressive Wharncliffe that there wasn't there, and then a lot of people realized they really love aggressive looking Wharncliffes.
Oh, it definitely.
And so and it's obviously helped with the custom side too. I do the mini Yeager. I've done the full size, which the full size is about a half inch.
Okay. I just, if you are talking in inch, I just have to. I have to do some quick math real quick, right? Because I have to change into centimeters, but
8 millimeters or something like that.
Half an inch, 1.25 centimeters, I think. 1 inch should be 2.5 centimeters or something.
Sometimes I can do millimeters. I can't do centimeters though.
Okay, millimeters, it should be 12.5.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because 1 millimeter is a lot smaller than what I'm thinking. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But anyway, so having the different sizes too is always helped me out because people with big hands, I like the custom one, obviously. And I've had a lot of requests for the production to be larger. But I don't think there's enough people out there that really want larger, especially these days. The market seems to be kind of shifting to, mid-size is always spot on. You always will do well.
Definitely.
And I'm starting to see a shift again, I think, back towards, even like the smaller customs that some guys make. But besides the point of that is, just, the Yeager kind of fell right in between that stuff. So I think that was another big selling point when they started coming out was it's a good size and it's boxy, but it's not overly large to where it takes up too much room in your pocket.
Yeah. It fits just in the pocket quite good. And even though if it's boxy, or it definitely is boxy, but the overall profile of the knife isn't that boxy, right?
Sure.
So I just love to carry it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so that's great. I love hearing it.
So let's start at the beginning of your knife making career.
Okay.
And that is always the same question. And that question is, has EDC always played a role in your life?
Yes and no. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now, obviously, to where I make sure I always have a knife in my pocket. I always, these days with like pry bars I'm doing now, but for years I've had a pry bar in my wallet. I bought a Lynch brand collab wallet to where I could slide a pry bar in. So now it's, I'm always carrying at least a pry bar and a knife. I don't have, pockets full of gear and flashlights and all that, but it's usually at least a knife and a pry bar.
Okay.
But early on, it was usually a small pocket knife, if I remember to take it with me. A lot of times whenever I was doing like home theater type installation work I did as a job, I did car audio for a while. A lot of times that stuff would live like in the tool bag or on the toolbox, not necessarily in my pocket. And then even growing up, I would have little pocket knives that I never really carried as a kid. Obviously, you're not taking them to school. Even honestly, back when I was a kid in Mississippi, I probably could have. But being in Boy Scouts for a long time, so I was raised around being, having a tool, stuff like that too, whatever. So it's always having like a pocket knife or like a Leatherman that's got everything on it. I try carrying Leathermans in a little pouch. Like, never really was a fan of it. If I was out camping, I had one with a little Velcro pouch and like a belt loop. Then I would carry something like that. But I never really used it as a knife. It was always like an extra tool because I had one of the big ones that had like the little saw blade on it, and the flathead screwdriver, the Phillips head screwdriver, the scissors, and so it was just, as needed type situations. It wasn't like an everyday type thing with me. And so anyway, but the earliest thing I can remember getting was I was in Boy Scouts and they had this, trying to remember what it was called. It was like almost like a type of show that you would go, and they would have like, it was like a convention.
Okay.
And they would sell gear there and pocket knives and Boy Scout branded stuff from, these camping companies and stuff like that would do stuff. And the very first knife I ever remember getting was a Swiss Army knife.
Classic.
It was one of the bigger ones. It wasn't one like the small ones. It was one of the bigger ones. And it had its own little Velcro pouch and stuff that you would keep it in. And I think it was like $45. And it was a fight to convince my parents to help me. They're let me spend the money, or they make them spend their money to buy it. And $45 for a knife these days for me I'm not buying a $45 knife anymore. That's a cheap knife.
That time is long time gone, right?
But so that's, it's never been, obviously, like I said, it's never been as prevalent as it is now, of course. But I've always had some kind of knife somewhere, knowing where it is or available to me as part of my EDC life, I guess.
So for us here in Germany, the SRK, or the Swiss Army knife, is an evergreen.
Right.
Because if I ask my friends, all of them had an SRK at some point in their child or teenage years. Right? Because everywhere you go, you can buy an SRK.
Yeah.
And there are so many models. Yeah. And for me as well, right? One of my first knives was an SRK, or the Opinel from France, right? Yeah. It's all the stuff right around here in the corner, or around the corner. And so SRK, classic, evergreen. We still hear, because it's one of the most popular legal carry options here in Germany. Our knife laws are pretty strict, and they just got a little stricter at the beginning of November this year.
That's not fun.
Oh no, definitely not.
Like, you carry the Yeager?
Excuse me?
Can you carry the Yeager in your pocket?
Not really.
No.
But there are exceptions to let you carry it or transport it. If you have a sealed pouch or something with a little, I can't remember the word for it.
Like Velcro or a snap or something to kind of keep
exactly,
it
exactly. Yeah. So it's not immediately accessible for you. That's fine.
Gotcha.
Or if you need it for your job or something, right? So if I'm making stuff for Instagram, because I have a business behind it, I can say, but it's my job. So that's, for me at least, a bit more
a way to get around the system, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you could say so.
It's and it's so different for us because over here, especially in the South and in South U.S., I live in Mississippi. Still, we're not super country. We do have running water and indoor toilets, but a lot of people are just a bunch of crazy rednecks around here. But it's so polarizing how different it is, because you can carry a daggum folding sword just about if you wanted to, and nobody's going to say anything. And even just it's completely different. But with gun laws around here, and where I am, you can legally carry on your hip openly, and the only restrictions are like federal buildings and schools. If a grocery store, say, or a local business has a sign that says no firearms, they can say that. But it's just so different, because I don't even think about what knife I carry. If I ever get pulled over in my truck, it's not gonna matter. They're not gonna take my knife. They might take it for a minute if I'm pulled over and I say, hey, there's a knife in my pocket. They might say, all right, well, let me get it out of your pocket and set it over here in my car out of the way, just for both of our safety. And then you get it back and you go home, and they don't ever keep it. And so it's so different how the world is in different parts, and and stuff like that with these knife laws and stuff.
Yeah, the thing is, folding knives like the Yeager, one-handed locking folding knives, they are not allowed to be carried.
Right.
But you can carry a fixed blade with up to 12 centimeters. That should be 4.7 inches blade length. That's fine.
That's a decent size blade too.
Yeah, exactly. Those you can carry openly, but folding knives not.
That's more. That's that's almost more dangerous than a folding knife.
Tell me about it.
And it's and we everywhere you deal with these silly laws and restrictions and stuff like that. But as you just mentioned, we all figure out ways to adapt to it.
Exactly. And figure out coming back to the SRK, being a slip joint knife, and in the community here, pretty well accepted, because you can get it anywhere, you see it everywhere.
Right.
It's easy to carry, and that's why it's such a beloved knife here in the area.
So you're saying I need to design a small Yeager slip joint?
Oh, that would be awesome. But you can keep the size of the Yeager and make it a double detent, and that's fine, right? So
one-handed opening
is okay.
It's okay
if it's not locking, it's fine. One-handed opening is allowed if it doesn't lock. But if it locks, it's only two-handed opening, and then you're fine again. So to be safe, it's always the classic slip joint, because it's not locking. It's in most cases it's two-handed opening. So you are just safe, right?
Okay. Interesting.
But if you want to hit the spot,
Yeah.
slip joint Yeager, hell yeah.
I'd have to think about that one. I do like slip joints. I just don't ever hardly carry them, mainly because most of them never have pocket clips on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so but now that I've started carrying a pry bar in my pocket, the new ones I've been making, in a leather slip in my pocket, I'm like, I actually kind of like this. I could almost have a second small leather slip in there with like a nice, which I own a very nice slip joint from, oh gosh, Evan Nicolaides. I just went blanking on the name.
Yeah, Esnix, right?
Esnix, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Evan, if you're listening to this. I got one of his Stingray models last year at Blade Show.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Absolutely gorgeous. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I never carry it. It's a beautiful knife that I want to carry more, but usually when it starts, in the winter months and stuff, from when I start wearing jeans again, I'll carry it in that small fifth pocket. But typically in the summer, it's just lightweight shorts and stuff, and I just don't have room for it, so I don't ever carry it. But yeah, I'll have to definitely ponder a slip joint styled Yeager. I think that would be really cool too.
Oh yeah, it would be hella cool, definitely. You would have a ton of fans out here.
I know a dealer over there that might be able to help sell them for me. Yeah.
Awesome. A new idea is born.
Yes. That's like things.
So let's go to the next question. And that is, when did you first came into contact with making knives?
Probably 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. So back then, I wouldn't say, maybe 2012, 2013. I wouldn't say back then I was a knife maker, though, because I was making handles for pre-made fixed blades that were already ground, sharpened, heat treated, everything. It's just had no handle on it. So my dad does a bunch of woodworking. He's retired now, and that's all he does with his time is woodworking. He did it as a hobby on the weekends and stuff like that before he retired. So he would be in the shop, and then, like I mentioned before, being in Boy Scouts, we would do the Pinewood Derby race cars, and like you make it. So we were always making, something. And then 2008, he ended up getting even more into woodworking with a lathe that he had gotten from my grandfather who had passed, who my grandfather also did woodworking as a hobby. And so it was kind of one of those, I always enjoyed working with my hands. Woodworking kind of was fun, but I'd always liked knives. But like I said, it was just never a major part of my life, but I always enjoyed knives. And at this point, I was starting to like cooler knives and looking at more expensive knives. And I'm saying more expensive as in, I never even pulled the trigger on spending $90 on it. It was a Spyderco Techno. Oh,
okay.
And that was like in my cart on Blade HQ for months and months and months, and I just couldn't justify $90 on a folding knife. I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. And so I had found these blanks, and so I bought a couple, made handles for them, learned how to do Kydex. Kydex wasn't too hard. You didn't really need a lot of equipment, really just, a toaster oven and some foam to squish around your blade. And that was it. And so it was pretty cheap to get into doing that stuff because my dad had a belt stainer. It wasn't really like a full-blown belt grinder like what I use now. So I couldn't really grind knives. He didn't know anything about metalworking. I didn't know anything about metalworking. And so we get to around 2015, which was the full-time job I had then, was what I quit whenever I decided to do the full-time knife. So we would have slow times during the day, during the weeks. Certain times of the year were slow. And so I would just, like we all do, go scrolling through YouTube, looking at YouTube, watching YouTube. And I just happened to come across a random video from Aaron Go, Go. I always get his name wrong. Guy, he's up in Canada. Makes really, really cool fixed blades.
Okay.
And he had done a video on how to do one with basic hand tools. Basic hand tools being files, fire bricks and a torch, really no full-blown machinery. He did pretty much everything manually, other than I think a cheap drill press to drill the holes in the tang and the handles and stuff. And so it got to the point of was like, I can build this file jig. It's just some wood and a couple screws, and then I'll go buy some files. And bought some files off of Amazon, and I hand filed the first bevels on a annealed 01 tool steel that I just bought off of Amazon. And so that's really kind of where it started, was around 2015. So it's kind of crazy. I'm coming up on 10 years of, what I say is been knife making. And go ahead.
Is that the spot you would say BBK was born? When you first started filing those knives? Yeah.
I found out real quick that I enjoyed doing it, but it was never a thought of I can do this full time or I want to be a knife maker. It was just, this is fun to do on the weekends. I was like, maybe I can sell some, because back then I was working Tuesday through Saturday. Wife and kids would be at daycare or work, and I would have an entire Monday basically of, doing little house chores and then just a whole day off to myself. And so at one point I was helping a friend of mine who was doing granite countertops and stuff for kitchens and bathrooms. I was doing that on my days off. I'd rather be doing something, making money, than sitting on my hands at the house. And so I started doing stuff at night. And then I got to the point of, it was like, let's see if I can sell something. Let's see if anybody wants it. And so I was working at a motorcycle four-wheeler shop. Most of our business was four-wheelers, and I was selling parts and accessories. I had a lot of repeat customers that only would talk with me. We were on commission, so they knew to only talk with me because I made money off of selling stuff to them. And a lot of hunters, outdoors guys, with the whole four-wheel world. And so became pretty good friends with some of these people just through that. Sold one or two. I think the very first one I sold was like $60. I was like, holy crap, somebody bought it. Something that I made. And so I sold one, I sold two, sold three, and then a guy who was local law enforcement was like, hey, I've got this design that a guy started, but he never finished it. It's for my vest and stuff that I wear. It's my SWAT vest that I wear for, certain situations when I need a big vest and I might want to have a big ass knife on me. So it's like a 10-inch overall, like a, 5-inch blade kind of thing. And he's like, you interested in trying? And I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, there's no way I can hand file this thing though. So that was the first time I'd actually ground a knife, like with my dad's grinder, and worked up a little, I think a piece of angle iron steel for just some kind of a jig to hold it and clamp it down. And then was like, man, this is way faster than hand filing, and ended up almost burning up his sander. And because it was fully enclosed, unlike you see the ones that we use, they're completely open. There's no enclosure around it. His was made for woodworking, and it's enclosed because it had a vacuum attachment to it. So you suck all the dust that would get caught in it.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of dust in there and metal sparks. And I did not put
I can relate.
Together, so
I'm a carpenter myself, so I can definitely relate.
I had to grab the thing, carried it outside, had to spray the water hose on it. I locked up the bearings on it because they got wet and rusted. I didn't dry it out as good as I thought I did and everything. And so from that point on, it was, hey, I I love that you love making these. I love that you can use my shop. I was out of the house at this point. I was married and stuff, and so I would go to their house and do this stuff. But he's like, "Sorry, but you're not using my sander anymore." You know? And so right then it was like, do I go and buy something cheap? Like a lot of guys went and started off with that 1x30 Harbor Freight, $150 little sander. And I just basically said, screw it. I really like this. I think I'm going to continue to like this as a just a hobby and just a way to make money. And then I'll make money, or I'll use the money to put back into, just more nice stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately just got my credit card and went and bought a big 2x72 grinder. And that was towards the end of 2015. And really ever since then, it's kind of just been a nonstop thing for me. And when I still remember when that grinder showed up, I had it delivered to my parents' house because my mom worked from home and there'd be somebody there to get it. Mm-hmm. And when I went over there and picked that thing up, and my dad was kind of like, a lot of money. I really hope you enjoy doing this because that's a $2,000 grinder that you just bought. And so, like I said, ever since then, it's kind of been nonstop. And long story short, it goes from a hobby to, a part-time job for me on my days off and nights. And I quit wasting time at night playing Xbox with my friends. I was going outside making knives, trying to make money. And then 2018, it was just kind of a wake-up call of, I don't like what I'm doing for a living. It's a dead-end job. I think I can make this work. And one part of that is where we live and how we were raised. Down here in the South, we're all pretty religious people to an extent. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I just took a lot of time and prayers and talking about it. And then honestly, a lot of praying about, okay, I have 3 kids. 3 of them all 3 of them are in daycare. That is not cheap. My wife has a good job. I have a good job. It's not a great job, but it's a good job and steady income. And even it just finally was like, I can go back to this job. I'll never forgive myself 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road when I'm still doing the same thing I'm doing now if I don't try it. Yep. And so that would kind of within, if you had 6 weeks before I quit, even a month before I actually quit and went full time, if you'd said, well, you do this full time, I'd have told you no. It just ended up being a real quick, like, light bulb moment, I guess you could say, in a month in the middle of 2018 of like, I've got to make a life change. I was already trying to find another job just because I didn't like what I was doing. I needed somewhere that was a career, not a job. And I was like, well, maybe this is my sign or the Lord telling me that you're not getting all these jobs. You're being turned down for all these jobs that I should have been qualified for, even overly qualified for doing stuff. And they were all telling me no. And I was like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be, is doing this knife stuff full time. And at that point, I hadn't even made a folder yet. I still hadn't even attempted a frame lock. Okay. And it was strictly fixed blades. And I had some orders, and I was doing about 5 or 6 fixed blades a week to cover the bills. And that was me working all day, usually about 6 days a week. Sometimes in the evenings. I tried not to. I still try not to, just, you get too tired, and that's when you make mistakes. Oh, yeah. But that's kind of what led me to, it just kind of a snowball effect from early on, like, hey, this is fun. Hey, let's make a real knife. Hey, I can make a real knife. I've learned how to do it. and then just kind of part-time. I didn't put a whole lot of my own money into it. Some, I mean, probably less than $10,000 of my own money. And then the rest of the money I was making from selling, it was all going right back into the business early on, because I didn't quote unquote need the money, because I had a job and we were able to cover our bills, just barely, but we were able to cover bills with both of our jobs. And so it's like, well, if I'm going to keep doing the knife stuff, I've got to use the knife money to put back into the knife company, because I can't keep trying to take money from my real job. We just, at that point, like I said, we just couldn't afford it.
Yeah,
and so
at some point you have to make progress, right?
Yeah, and that was what scared me the most, was because I was used to taking all my money that I was making and essentially just putting it right back into the company. It's like, well, now, yeah, I can make more knives because I'm doing it all day, every day, which hopefully will in turn make me more money. But now I have to split the profits. And that was the scariest part, was like, I've got to be able to save money and have money for life, plus money to be able to put back into buy more materials and stuff like that. And that's the stressful part early on, is you don't have that cash flow of, at the point where I'm at now with the production stuff and designs with Civivi and the Wii knives and my own productions and the customs, I have a mild bit of cash flow, which just, that alleviates a lot of stress. It's like, well, I need to build this knife. I messed up this material. I need more. I can just go order it and get it sent real quick. Whereas before, it's like, well, shit, I got to wait till next week when I make some more money to start over on this, because I'd have to start something else to finish it. And so that's what always had scared me, and what had kept me from really ever thinking about doing it. I was like, I don't think I could make enough to do it. And, it just ended up being one of those things. Thankfully, the more that I made, the more people saw them, more people wanted them. Current customers that had already had stuff from me wanted another one. And it was crazy to me, because I'd never had anything or sold anything myself. I did retail for years, but it was always selling other people's things. It was never anything that I created on my own. And it just kind of was mind blowing to me that people wanted this thing that I made. And it was just kind of it's not a necessity. And I knew there was markets for that stuff because of what I was doing before. All my other retail experience, really, I worked for Best Buy for a long time doing home theater stuff or car audio stuff. It's all optional. You don't have to have a 50-inch plasma TV. You don't have to have two 12-inch subs in your car.
Yeah, luxury, right?
Yeah. And then at the four-wheeler place, it's like some of these people did rely on their four-wheelers and their side-by-sides and stuff like that, because they did have a farm. But most people were buying this stuff where I was working. They're buying to go mud riding. They'll play and go mud riding and tear this thing up. And it's like, well, people spend money and thousands of dollars on that. It's like, why not? Why wouldn't there be people that spend their their extra money on knives? And then the more I got into it, I didn't realize, even when I went full time, I still didn't realize how vast this world, this industry is, especially when it comes to prices. I've seen and handled $25,000, $50,000 knives now, and
that's insane, right?
Stuff from Michael Raymond and Todd Rexford, and then I've got a budget knife with Civivi for $60.
Yeah.
And and those are sold worldwide. And so, not to jump too far ahead, but early on, I kind of realized what I wanted to do with the business was essentially kind of diversify to as many of those price points as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, well, the more price points I can hit, that's the more customers I can hit. The knife I'm working on now for the show in Kentucky next month, I probably have, between all the mess ups with it and just trying new stuff with this knife, I probably have almost 3 weeks into this knife. I have more money and time into this thing than I've ever spent on any other knife.
Oh, okay.
And so hopefully it'll be an auction, and I'm hoping it'll be my best auction ever.
Mm.
And on the flip side, I still have stuff sitting in my house available for $60, and I'm hoping this thing is going to sell for over 7,000. And
okay.
it's just
That's quite a range. Yeah.
Completely different markets.
Yeah,
and so I knew early on, it's like, I want to hit those markets, but there's no way I can make a $65 knife myself.
Oh no.
Not even a fixed blade these days. You just, by the time you go buy steel and you cut it and just your time and energy into it, you can't even make a
$65 gone.
Yeah. You've got $45 in materials, and
yeah.
Sorry, I'm worth more than $5 an hour. So, it's as much as I can say that I plan for it to happen this way. I had a vision for it, but the way the production stuff has gone for me, I never imagined it turning into what it's turned into when I decided to take that jump to full-time knife maker designer.
Yeah, that's quite a risk, to take this jump into something you can't really predict at the beginning,
right?
And now becoming this brand and sitting safe in the saddle, right?
Yeah, and it's weird is that people talk about my brand these days, and it's still kind of weird to me. It's like, your brand is like, I still don't even call it that. I just, people ask me what I do, and it's like, I've quit saying I'm just a knife maker since I do all this other stuff. It's like, I was like, well, it sounds a little better saying I own a knife company.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they're like, well, what all do you do? And then it usually starts off like, oh, have you ever been on Forged in Fire? Like, no. And then I explain to them, it's like, well, I do designs for people, and then my shop. Most people, it's been a while since I've taken some pictures or done like a little shop tour, but it's almost more like a machine shop than what people think about somebody who makes knives. And so it's always cool with like local friends or just somebody I meet, or even people in my neighborhood that actually come into the shop and see the shop. They're like, whoa, this is nothing like what I had imagined it would look like. And so it's
not the classic Forged in Fire knife maker, right?
Yeah. Definitely no Forged in Fire for me. It's maybe machining under fire, but yeah. So it's getting off track here, but it's been really cool for me, and just a blessing and an honor to end up where I have ended up so far. And I don't want to say I'm a household name in the knife world, because there's still a bunch of people that I see at every show that have not heard of my stuff. But, that's the other thing of trying to hit all these different markets. And, I'll give a plug out to a not as well known a production company that I worked with as Iconic.
Oh yeah.
They're new. I think they just went live like early or beginning of last year, but they've been trying to get their stuff out there into larger retailers and stuff. And unfortunately, I didn't hear it from them, which I wish I would have. But a friend of mine had gone into Buc-ee's, and I don't know if you've seen or heard about Buc-ee's. It's basically you know what Walmart is,
Oh
obviously.
yeah.
It's basically the Walmart of gas stations.
Okay.
It is absolutely gigantic. They are almost like a sightseeing ordeal. If you are close to one and you don't have one anywhere near you, you've never been. If you see a Buc-ee's, like you have to stop. It's almost an experience.
Okay.
And I've always loved Buc-ee's. They offer food in there, really good food, barbecue, and then they have all their own branded snacks, and they have cheap gas, which is another draw of why people stop there. And when you stop there, literally every single one of these, there's like 100 pumps in a row.
Oh wow.
It's absolutely insane how big these places are. But Iconic has worked up a contract with Buc-ee's, and Iconic has 5 models, I believe, 4 or 5 with different designers. Myself, obviously, and you can go into Buc-ee's and find one of these, and they're not quite nationwide. They're mainly like to the southeast U.S., but they're slowly expanding throughout the country, and it's just the first like major retailer that's not an online or even a storefront that's a nice store that has something from me. So that was really cool realization for me to be like, okay, if these guys keep going, or if Civivi decides that they've got to deal with Walmart now, maybe Civivi decides to start offering Walmart knives from designers like myself. It's like, man, if I had a knife at Walmart, that's just the physical amount of knives that people would buy just from being
insane,
and it's just thinking about that many people having something in their hands that I designed is really cool to me, and regardless of making money on it and stuff, and just that's what really makes me so happy about all of this stuff, is me creating something and talking to people that just absolutely love it. And it's like, some people, there's a collector out there, he only buys my knives, period. That's it. He has a big custom collection, and I met him last year at a show, and it was like, hey, what else do you collect? What other makers do you? He's like, nobody.
Oh wow.
He's like, yeah, I came across the Yeager, loved the design. I think he ended up with early on with a production one, realized he loved it, found out that I make custom ones and stuff, started hunting down, trying to find a custom, got a custom, and now his entire customs collection is all my stuff. Different models, not just Yeagers now, but different models, and it's just very humbling to have somebody like that that's like, I like you, I like your work, I'm not buying anybody else's, period.
That's quite a compliment.
It is. It's almost the best compliment there can be in this world.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
But that was a long roundabout way of how I got here.
What was the first knife that got your BBK logo on it?
It would have been a different logo than what I use now. It actually used to be 2 Bs kind of stacked on top of each other. Very similar to Berg blades. Designed by, I'll go back to the job that I had with a customer of mine. He was a graphic designer, and I talked to him about what I was doing, and he had asked me about what's the name of the company. I was like, it's just going to be, or the name of your knives. I was like, it's just Brian Brown Knives. And he just came in one day and was like, hey, you need a logo or something for your brand, your company, your something to put on your knives. And so he had just done a simple graphic for me. And that's what I used early on. And then, funny side story, Berg Blades actually blocked me very early on because I made a small little cleaver style, and that's what he was known for back early on, was his Cleaverito fixed blades. And he thought I was copying him because I had a small little cleaver design that looked different, but then I had the same kind of BB logo. and I didn't even know he existed at that
Oh
point in time.
wow.
I'd never run across him on Instagram or anything like that. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of a funny story. We're friends now, but it would have probably been one of those little, I call them the Flying Dutchman. It would have been one of those little small fixed blades. And I think the fixed blade had been Cerakoted. It had been the whole blade kind of like, are you familiar with Cerakote?
Yeah.
So they had been Cerakoted black. I took it to a local machine shop here who had a laser and had them laser on. I told them how big I wanted it. And then they called me and said it was done. And I didn't realize how small it actually was. It was like itty bitty on there. You could see it, but not really. And I still remember going and picking it up because that was like the first one ever with my logo on it. And I never did the etching like with the solution and the paper. I never actually did any of that. Not long after that, I found a gun store here who did police supplies, and they had bought an early on fiber laser that was like $50,000-$60,000 at the time. And so I used to have them laser my logo on every single knife for years. I would have to drive out there, take them all the fixed blades for that week, and then towards the end of obviously the folders, but everything I would make a week, every Thursday or Friday. I was almost scheduling myself to be like a Monday through Friday. So on Fridays, I could go out there, give them to the guy real quick. He'd laser them there while I was waiting. And I'd become friends with him to where it was just kind of like I could just show up, go through the back door, laser them real quick, and then be done. And I ended up actually, they were kind of like the first dealer for me, essentially, because they actually had asked for a handful of fixed blades to sell, and I did a bunch of like black with blue lines for police officers, and then black with red lines for like law enforcement or not firefighters. And then I did a couple like with the green line in them for like wildlife agencies or like stuff like that. And so it was pretty cool. They had them, they sold them. I think there was only one that sat for a while, but yeah, it's pretty cool that now I just do all my own logos, which is handy for sure.
Is the Flying Dutchman still around?
Yes and no. I've not made one in a long time. I ended up adapting it to be called just the Dutchman. As a folder, and I did one run with Tuya, which was they're a small OEM, and it was a collab deal that ended up kind of going sour, unfortunately. But then I'll show you on here on the camera anyway. That is the current Dutchman. Very small. This is like maybe 6 inches overall. It's tiny. And I actually think, so what ended up happening is Urban EDC wanted to have it done through Riot. I wasn't going to do any more myself. They took the design exclusively for them as a collab. And sorry, my kids just walked off the school bus. They're waving at me. So Urban EDC still has some of these available. It's probably been 18 months, 2 years since they got released. But I think they still have a couple left. But they did okay. It's at the time, I think it was just way too small. And like, it is small. I mean, you can fit this like in your fifth pocket style, but it was kind of like my tiny version of something to do that was still a Warncliffe style. Actually, this is more of a sheep's foot because it's rounded in the front. But I do have requests still from people to make more of them in a fixed blade because the big one was maybe 7.5, 8 inches overall length, but it's really tall, so it was almost like a small cleaver style knife, which was pretty cool. I enjoyed making them.
So, how do you come up with all those new ideas? Is there something that inspires you more than anything else?
Usually it's a blade shape. I want
Okay.
to create a blade shape, and that's really where the Yeager came from. Was
Hmm.
I had decided to do a Warncliffe fixed blade, so my Taka model fixed blade had the handle shape and then a Tonto blade. Well, then I ended up doing variations of it. So I had the Taka W, which was very, very early on. It was Taka Warncliffe.
Hmm.
And then I had a drop point variation, which was Taka, because a Taka D sounded funny. I was like, well, it's like a drop point variation. So I was like, I called it the Taka D. And so that ended up being too confusing. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do the Tonto first. Let's do the Warncliffe first. The handle shape doesn't really work for what I want. So I just designed a whole new knife around a Warncliffe blade. And that's where the Yeager came from, was just me wanting to do a Warncliffe folder. And even back with the fixed blades, it was, I think I want to draw up a Tonto and
Mm.
do a Tonto style knife. So I drew a Tonto and then just made a handle that looked like it flowed well with it. And so now with the folders, it's most of my designs are actually adapted from the fixed blades. So like I just mentioned, the Taka, very, very similar shape between the fixed blade and the folder. Obviously,
Okay.
some changes have to be there.
Yeah, sure.
The Yeager was essentially kind of a one-off, and then the newest model I've done, the 51, which I did the Mac 51 with HMC, and then I have the custom 51s that I'm doing. That was kind of drawn up on its own, not as a fixed blade. The Warthog was a fixed blade first, and a lot of people actually don't know that. The Warthog model that's probably one of the most, if not the most popular model of mine right now for the custom side,
Okay.
is that one. And a lot of people don't even know that it started out even with it's got a window in the blade as well. And actually had done that as a fixed blade. Who needs a window in a fixed blade? You don't. I strictly had done it for aesthetics, just because I
Yeah.
thought it looked cool. And I was like, well, it's something different, so why not? Nobody has a fixed blade with a hole in it. And it just ended up working out perfectly. A customer had gotten a fixed blade from me, saw the Warthog design, loved it. He's a big folder collector of custom folders, and was like, hey, you really should adapt that into a folder.
Mm.
And I was kind of like, it might work. And now I love making them. It's one of my favorite overall designs ever. I almost carry that and like it more personally than the Yeager. But so it's just now I come up with a design, or I have a blade shape that I want to do, and I just have to fold it, obviously, and just make it fit into a handle. I make it
Hmm.
fit. I draw the lines to where it's like, all right, it's got to be here. It's got to be here. Handle to blade ratio as much as I can get, because I hate having a whole bunch of extra handle on
Oh, yeah.
there. It's just wasted real estate. You could make the blade longer, make the handle shorter, whatever. And then basically I just draw the handle to where it looks comfortable and it covers all the sharp and pokey bits of the blade. I'm not, I don't have any of these design philosophies of I was inspired by, pretty much all my stuff is named after birds, airplanes, jets, or something flying related.
Yeah.
And so the very first model I had that actually had a name was just a standard style drop point fixed blade, and I called it the Rocket. And so
Hmm.
all of them, at one point, I was lasering just a little tiny rocket on there, and then my logo on the other side. And then the Flying Dutchman, which is a flying ghost ship. So that's the Dutchman. And then the Taka, which is Japanese for hawk.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeager is after Chuck Yeager. He was the first man to break the speed of sound and a jet. So it was named actually after a person, but still aircraft related, obviously.
Aviation, yeah.
And then the Warthog is named after the A-10 Warthog. Yeah. It's got a big clip point on it, and it's a real aggressive clip point. And if you look at how the cockpit, the big bubble design cockpit on that A-10 Warthog is designed, it mimics this blade style. And so that name just ended up working out perfect for that design. I didn't design it around the Warthog. I designed it, then realized I was like, holy shit, that's a perfect name for it.
Awesome.
And so the 51 is after the P-51 Mustang. The knife looks nothing like that plane at all. There's not a design aspect on that knife that comes from it. I just like the name. And actually, the first name of it, when it was bigger, I only did one. It was called the Harpy, which is a big eagle, is a harpy. And part of the reason why I picked that name is my oldest daughter. Her name is Harper. We call her Harpy a lot of times as just like a short nickname. I was like, well, that fits. But then funny thing is like, well, I'm starting to do the Mac project with HMC Knives, where he was machining everything and I was finishing them out, like a mid-tech, machine-assisted custom Mac, whatever you want to call it. But Mac Harpy did not flow well at all. And so since I had changed the size, I was like, I've only made one. It's not going to be that big deal if I change the name. And so I kind of took a poll. I don't remember who came up with the name, but somebody was like, P51 or just 51. I was like, Mac 51. I was like, that sounds good. I like that. So I just changed it to that, and and that's almost a problem now, because every time I want to do something new, like I've got the Raptor. I can't forget the Raptor. The Raptor's name, which a Raptor is a bird of prey plus the F-22 Raptor. Yeah. And then you don't realize how many people name their knives after planes and jets until you try to come up with a name that nobody else has used.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the hard thing. And so the Civivi, the X1, is very reminiscent of the Yeager. It's very similar blade shape, completely different handle shape. The X1 is actually the aircraft that Chuck Yeager flew.
Oh, okay.
Oh. And so initially I wanted it to be the Civivi, just the letter X and then the number 1. Well, somebody already used it. And so Civivi and we do a lot of research looking into names because they don't want to reuse names unless it's a name that I've already used. But because it's a new design and it's nothing associated with me, they're like, sorry, we can't do that. And so I just changed it to EXONE. So X1 that way. So it's still the same. And they're like, okay, that works, because if you go search for the letter X and then 1, you're going to get something different. But if you go type in EXONE, it's going to pull up the Civivi version. And so, because those knives were similar, I was like, I've got to be able to incorporate the names to kind of be similar too. And
I think that's the mind blow right now for me.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things that, I made a post about it whenever they were released, but, people don't always see that stuff. It gets missed, or maybe they didn't read the whole post or whatnot. And so it's really cool for me to, talk about it like this and then tell people, that I actually do try to put a lot of thought into these names and these models. Whereas I think that's an aspect that gets overlooked sometimes. It's like, most people don't come up with a name first, so I don't want to say it's like an afterthought, but it's just something that people are like, okay, well, this name sounds cool, this name sounds cool, but they have nothing to do with each other. And so that was another thing early on that I figured out, that I was like, all right, I need some cohesive elements to where all these different knife names and designs and all this stuff kind of go together and semi makes sense if you know about it, kind of thing. It's not too far-fetched if you don't, but if you do, it's like, all right, this guy actually put a little bit of thought into it.
Which design carried embodies BBK the most?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, that's always the question. What's your favorite child, right? So
right.
that's a real toughie.
I'm being a bit of a smart ass, but I mean, obviously it's the Yeager, just because that's what I am known for. And thankfully, so I did the Yeager. We talked about it being in kind of a boxy, basic shape.
Yeah.
And so my early thoughts, not realizing the production stuff was going to do as well as it has for me, was, all right, I want two designs. I've got the Yeager. It's boxy. It's not humongous, but it's obviously going to take up more room in your pocket than, say, a Chris Reeve Sabenza. And I was like, well, I need something like that might appeal to a broader audience, because the Yeager sometimes seems to be one of those I love it or I hate it. Like, I hate that blade shape, it's useless, or it's like, I absolutely love it kind of thing. And so I was like, I need something else. And so that's where the Raptor came from.
Okay.
I wanted slimmer, maybe a little bit longer, because it still wouldn't feel as big. So the Raptor isn't much bigger than the Yeager. It's a little bit bigger, but it's incredibly thin compared to the Yeager.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was kind of the thing, is like, they're very opposite designs, but that was the idea of, all right, well, I need to hit a second market of people, because not everybody likes a blocky Warncliffe design. And so I was like, well, not wanting to copy the Sabenzas, obviously the Raptor looks completely different, but I was like, something along those lines, that's such an iconic knife, and an iconic, just the size of the small Sabenzas. It's one of those, entry-level drug knives that almost everybody has. It's a Spyderco paramilitary or a Sabenza.
Yeah.
It's usually one of those two once you start getting into the little bit, nicer, more expensive production knives. And so it's like, well, it's not going to be an entry level, production knife. It's still going to be, $350 to $600 with the nicer materials. But I was like, I need that shape. And so back to the question is, there's a lot of people out there that know me for the Raptor. Then they found the Yeager because the Yeager never really appealed to them. So they were just kind of like back when Instagram was cool and you could actually find new people. People be scrolling like, I don't really like that style, and they'd scroll past it. And well, then I come up with the Yeager, and I have diehard Raptor fans that have only ever had Raptors from me, because they just do not care for the Yeager style. And it seems to be that way on the custom side. Early on, I had a ton of people wanting the Yeager, but when I started not really getting away from it, but designing more stuff, I don't make as many custom Yeagers as I used to. Part of it is just I get bored easy. And so that's part of the reason why I still love the custom side of things, because I've got the same like 5 or 6 models, but by the time I make 2 or 3 of like a Warthog or Taka or something, it's like, all right, let's go make a Yeager now.
Okay.
And I find the enjoyment in it again. I lose the enjoyment of making the same model over and over and over and over again, even if it's all completely different materials, they all look different. I get bored. And so that's why I love being able to do what I do in the shop, because it's like, oh, this would be a really cool combo, and I can go make it. And so there's only one of them, but it's still one of those things that's like itching in the back of my head. It's like, I need to make this combo. I don't have to wait on a production run of 250 of them.
Yeah.
And so but sorry, sidetracking again, but
no worries.
Obviously, yeah, the Yeager is basically synonymous with BBK these days, and so yeah.
What's the one thing that impacted you the most?
So that's the one question you sent me that I was like, I really don't know. I would probably have to say just the community, the relationships among the makers.
Okay.
Obviously, I love the community as a whole and all the customers and guys like you that do this type of stuff. But because I started out making custom knives, not knowing what I was doing, not learning from anybody, in their shop, learning strictly from YouTube or asking somebody a question, saying, hey,
by your own mistakes, right?
a lot of it. And then, I didn't know how to use ferric chloride to etch a blade. And I'm like, hey, how are you getting the blade like this dark gray color? Because you're doing it in your shop, you're not sending out to be Cerakoted. Like I didn't, these days it's just common knowledge, it seems. But back then I didn't have a clue what ferric chloride was, and you could acid etch a blade in it, and then you tumble it, and there's a stone wash blade. And so I don't want to say I got lucky because a lot of the community is this generous with information. There's very, very few secrets that I've learned. But you familiar with Tactical Pterodactyl, Frankie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Frankie, so right before I bought my big grinder, I had a smaller grinder that my parents had actually got me, just did not work well for the knife making. He used it for his handles, the same size that I had. And I didn't use it anymore, just sat in the corner. And this was like only a year into it for me. And I had seen his work, followed his work, loved his fixed blades, still do. And he had posted looking for a grinder or something. I don't remember what had happened. I think his burn up, he couldn't find another one local, was just like, oh shit, I need help. Community, somebody tell me they can find one, whatever. So I was like, hey, I got one. You can just have it. Just pay the shipping on it. It wasn't very expensive. And so he had answered a bunch of questions early on for me before that. And so I was like, this is my way of repaying him for all this information. And getting to know him early on and just how good of a person he is and how caring he is and how helpful he is to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and taking their time to answer my stupid questions, which to him is common knowledge now. And so it really helped me early on not be as nervous to ask questions if I didn't know something, because he opened the door and was willing to help. It's like, well, most of the community seems to be this way. And so there's really only, I think, one time I can remember I asked a guy, hey, how do you do this? And it is kind of like a proprietary finish that he does. Never seen anybody. I was like, hey, curious on how you do that. I'd love to try it. And he said, I'll tell you anything you want to know but that.
Oh, okay.
And I get it. I understand. It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
It didn't bother me one bit. I wasn't like, why are you, gatekeeping the secret? But then I kind of took the time to think about it. I was like, he is the only person that does that. I wouldn't want to share it either. And he was real nice about it. And then I kind of felt kind of bad asking because knowing it's kind of a proprietary, I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have asked in the first place. Kind of thing. But, back to, everybody else. And this thing, I'm friends with him now, and I've made so many good relationships in the world, in the knife world now, that I'm kind of weird when it comes to knife shows. Unlike a lot of makers, if they don't have a table, they're not going to the show. There's a few out there that do it, but I go to a lot of shows and I don't even have a table. I just love hanging out with people and hanging out with the world, the knife world, and just I become such good friends with these guys that we have dinners together. We see each other, and it's like we saw each other the day before or an hour earlier. There's no hiccup in seeing each other or talking to each other, and it's ended up like that with a lot of customers now.
Came for the knife, stayed for the people, right?
Yeah. And
it's always that one phrase that always hits.
It is, and not so much on the production side, but on the custom side, they say you buy the maker as much as you buy the knife.
Oh yeah.
Granted, there is a lot more disconnect in there with production stuff, but I still try to put my name, or not my name, but my face out there, and say, hey, if you need help, I do have pretty strict rules that I've set for myself and make it known on my website saying, hey, if you have issues after X amount of time on your production knife, sorry, I'm not touching it. But if it's, I don't get any warranty through RIAT at all, other than like immediately when I get it. 6 months down the road, there's one that's got a problem. RIAT's like, sorry, you accepted them. And so I had to set some kind of a limit. And so if somebody's like, hey, this thing has a problem, and I'm like, well, there's only a month warranty on it, but if it's like a month and a half or 2 months out, like just message me. I'm going to take care of it, probably. Unless I tell you jacked up something, and I just, you've got to set those boundaries. But then again, I try my best to go out of the way to help people. And if it's something that's just like, hey, sorry, that's not something I'm going to do. You've had this thing for a year. There's guys that handle this type of stuff. Here's their info.
Oh, okay.
There's other people. They're like, sorry, it's not my problem. Good luck. I don't agree with that type of customer service. And I think a lot of it goes back to my old job as being, like I said, I was 100% commission at that job. And so if I didn't help people and didn't do a good job at it, they weren't going to come back and buy something from me again later on. And we're talking, accessories for these units and stuff we were selling stuff for could be, thousands of dollars over time that I'm getting a percentage of. And it's like, well, I got to do everything I can to keep them happy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it would seem to be even more exaggerated whenever I went to be on my own. It's like, well, I really got to do everything to keep people happy now because it's my livelihood, period, not somebody else's. I'm not making money for this guy. I'm not making money for this company. It's for me. And if I want to keep making money, I've got to keep these people happy.
You make money for your company, so to say, right? Yeah.
And so, that's the best part of doing what I do for myself is I look at everything I sell and it's like all the profit, it's for me. And that's, that ends up being, obviously why a lot of people want to start a business. But, I can honestly say that is not the entire reason I started doing what I was doing. Obviously, I need money. I never expected it to be what it's become and me be able to build the shop that I've got and buy the equipment that I've got. It's been amazing. And so,
is there any future project you might want to tease us?
Okay. Yeah, there's two that I'll tease. One is more or less confirmed and waiting to go into production. The other one is still waiting on final design. So they're pending the design and somebody working on it. There should, and hopefully I can successfully say there will be a Raptor V3.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Coming hopefully next year.
Okay.
These things take time. And so with the guys I'm working with on this, it'll be a collaboration. With something cool on it. It'll be something different that I've never done. It'll be new for the brand. It'll be new for me. But it will be a collaboration. It won't be a sole deal through me, but it should be pretty cool. But since I don't even have drawings and even close to a prototype yet, I don't want to go too far into it in case something happens. But the next thing I will tease is the Wii Trogon.
Yeah.
So those came out last year.
Yeah.
It's a decent size knife. We actually wanted the Warthog model, but I designed the Trogon because I didn't want them having an exact replica of Warthog. So I designed the Trogon for them. It released out last year, and it's 7 3/4 to 8 inches overall size. Not horribly large, but still bigger than longer overall than the Yeager. I recently got a prototype in of what I asked them to say mini, but I think I'm gonna ask them to change it to a micro Trogon.
Okay.
It will be about 6.5 inches overall, so significantly smaller.
Oh yeah.
It's completely scaled down. It's not just shortened, so it is fully scaled down. So it's much thinner. And like I said, I did get the prototype. I carried it. I've had it for maybe 3-4 weeks now. Had it for a bit. And other than my preference, I'm a stiff detent kind of person. I know how to hold a frame lock without getting on the lock bar. Can flick it, no problem. Any model, most enthusiasts are okay with that.
Stiff detent, best detent.
I much prefer, it's not super light to where you can shake it out. Yeah. But it's light enough to where with the fuller model of the bigger Trogon and the detent on those, you can kind of get your finger in the little fuller and flick it. It kind of comes flopping out a little bit trying to fuller flick this new one. So I just asked them to make the detent a little stiffer. But overall, I wanted them to be pretty much identical to the full size. So the same grind, the same shape, identical, the same micro milling on the handles, which everybody absolutely loved on that knife. So everything is just scaled down smaller. And so I'm really excited about that one. Like we had talked about earlier, I think smaller knives are making a comeback. And especially with worldwide regulations these days, I have started taking some of that into account on my designs. And I'm thinking like, well, with this small as this one is, it might be legal or more appealing to people in other parts of the world. And so maybe that can help me broaden some of the customer base.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that one. Like I said, it's very, very early on since I just got the prototype, but I've approved it with them, and so I just have to wait for Wii, and it will be under Wii, not Civivi. Wait for that just to kind of get thrown into their lineup. So my guess is at least 6 months. I'm hoping it'll come out around Blade Show again next year, like the X1 did, which was awesome to have a knife release with them Blade Show weekend. Oh, yeah. Literally the Thursday before Blade Show was when that knife got released.
Oh, wow.
And so, I was able to get some in hand before the release. They were gracious enough to let me buy some and said, just hold them until this date. And so I was able to actually have them on my table at Blade Show this year and do a kind of a release the same time as they did at the show, which was really awesome.
So if you out there want to stay informed about what's Brian about to release, check his Instagram and join the newsletter on his homepage, so you won't miss a bit. Because I'm pretty excited for the Raptor, I have to say. Yeah. Because a friend of mine has one, and I handled it. But that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And first, I didn't like the slimness of the handle, but now I kind of got to love it. Yeah. Because back then I was pretty new into EDC and knives. And now, after handling a dozen or hundreds of knives, you kind of get another perspective, right? After you started getting into knives. And now I definitely know how to enjoy these kind of knives. And that's why the Raptor makes me so excited, right? Because especially if you say there's something on it I never have done before, and it's a collaboration between you and someone that can mean a lot, right? And so,
it's so the main deal, I don't want to say problem or issue with the Raptor, is that it's so thin. So that's the only, I guess you could say, drawback of it for some people, is how thin it is. If you have big hands or you're not very good at a thumb stud knife, that knife is kind of difficult to open because of how easy it is to get your fingers on the lock bar. And so I actually had at the show this last weekend, a customer brought one by. I was like, hey, can you look at this real quick? I just happened to have it with me. I knew you were going to be here. I didn't ship it to you or ask you about it, but it seems kind of stiff. And so he just classic big hands, and just gets on the lock bar a little bit too much when he's trying to open it, because I handled it. Everything felt just fine to me. And I showed him, and he's like, oh, okay, well, if that's what it is, I'll just practice with it more. And I've actually had to make videos for guys. Never had to make a video on a Yeager on how to like hold it and open it. And I've actually had to do it probably 20 times for the Raptor. Or just during releases when people get them, just because of that aspect of just being so thin, being only thumb studs. So to tease a little bit more about the V3 change, it will be, hopefully, as I said, it'll work, but it will be a style of a flipper tab that I'm sure if I have to collaborate with somebody and it's a flipper tab, I'm sure everybody else you can deduce who it might be with or what it is. So that's all I'm going to tease on that. But that will obviously make it way easier to open. I'm not a big fan of flipper tabs. The Yeager is kind of an exception, but on the Raptor, I just could not design a flipper tab that looked good, and so I never did. It was always thumb studs. And so if this works out, I would probably actually, I'm not a huge fan of dual opening either. Excuse me. So like a thumb stud and a flipper tab never really appeals to me. So most likely these will actually have 0 thumb studs on them at all. Just a nice clean blade. No windows, no holes in the blade, nothing like that. It probably would take a little bit of getting me used to seeing it with nothing there on the flats of the blade. But overall, I think it's going to be a really cool setup if it all comes together and works out the next year. Okay,
so stay informed, guys.
Yeah,
this is going to be exciting. What's your personal highlight in the history of Brian Brown knives?
Personal highlight would probably have to be Blade Show 21.
Okay.
So first show I've ever done, and took 10 knives. Hadn't really done any lottos at all, especially at a show. Obviously not at a show. I'd never been to a show. So I didn't have any clue what kind of people were going to want my stuff. So I was offering, I think, 1 lotto each day, 1 auction each day, and 3 first come, first serves each day. Had one guy before the show say, hey, I'm waiting in line for this knife. One guy, that was it. That's the only person that said anything to me. And he wanted to make sure I wasn't somebody who sold stuff before the show opened. Because that does happen. You wait in line all night, you go to the table, there's only one that's already gone, and you're the first person there. That's got to be the worst feeling ever, and it's going to kill your view of that company or that person. You're not going to want to buy anything from them again. I was like, that's not me. And so he was number 2 in line. The guy in front of him was going to a completely different maker. And that's the only person I knew was coming to my table. Doors open. We all know how they run. This is back before they kind of told them to stop running. There was a mad rush of probably 10 or 15 people to my table.
Okay.
They're opened, laid out on the table. I swear somebody was about to get cut. Didn't realize until that day how much people really wanted my customs. And they were literally the first 30 seconds those doors were open, all my first come first serve were gone. Blew me away.
Oh wow.
And so same thing the very next day. People almost pushing and shoving to get to the table to get a knife. And at this point, I was more comfortable with my work too. I felt like I kind of had hit my stride and knew what I was doing. I'd been doing it since 2018. And so felt more comfortable with the quality and actually having people handle them there and everything. And so I was like, well, why not enter one into the awards? Worst case scenario is I don't win. So what? Somebody's already going to buy the thing. That's why I'm here, is to make money. So I submitted it was a mini Warthog, submitted it for best tactical, and ended up winning. Very first show, blown away by the amount of support, the highest auctions I had ever done, the best auction prices I'd ever done. I think at that point, 2 of the craziest builds I'd ever done for the auctions. Submitted that, ended up winning the award that year, and I had zero expectations, which I think almost kind of made it a little bit better, because you submit it and it's like, I've won this before, maybe I've got a good chance at it. Then you don't. You're kind of like, oh, my shit was better than that guy's stuff. There's a little cockiness. I've learned to. I don't call it cocky. I call it that I've gained some confidence in my work, I think. But at that point, I was not as confident as I am now with my stuff, just because I still felt, like a little tiny new guy that still didn't really know what I was doing and still learning. And I'm still learning a bunch today, especially with getting this CNC machine in here. It's learning every single day. And, but definitely the highlight of my career was so far, I think, was getting that award. And I take it to almost every show with me. I put it on the table, as a way to kind of show, not that I'm trying to prove myself, but just to show people that may not know me, like if they see my stuff, and it's kind of like, does he know what he's doing? If I buy something from him, is it going to be quality? I kind of viewed it as like, this is my confirmation that people other than friends or customers, it's showing that, okay, a panel of judges that don't know me said this is a quality knife that functions properly, aesthetically, fit and finish, everything is as it should be. And so for that weekend really gave me a new perspective, just and confidence in myself and my work. And it just all being that same weekend was just, it was almost a dream. Almost it was absolutely crazy weekend. And I don't think I've really fully appreciated it until recently, when I've looked back on it, being like, how many people can say they won an award like that at their very first show?
Not many.
And and so it's still one of those things I strive for every year. I try to take. I don't go do as blade show as much as I did, just because of all these other smaller custom only shows kind of fits my market better. I don't really sell a whole lot of productions at shows. Even at Blade Show this last year, I didn't sell many at all. I do better at shows with taking custom stuff, and so Blade Show's a really long weekend for an in-demand custom maker. And so all these smaller, like shorter shows kind of fit that side of the business better. And so it's and another thing too with the shows and stuff like that, another kind of peak moment for me was late last year, TKI is a huge show. TKI, the Tactical Knife Invitational. Invitational meaning you have to be invited by promoters. You can't say, I want to go to the show. I'm a knife maker, like Blade Show. And they're like, okay, you are a knife maker. You have a knife company. Okay. Here's space. Here you go. You have to be invited. And so TKI was always a big show for me that I aspired to go to. And it was kind of surreal getting invited last year, and the timing didn't work out, and I had to decline it.
Oh, damn.
I couldn't go. And so, and then Friday Night Blade Affair, same kind of thing. I got invited to Friday Night Blade Affair for this year, and it happened to be the same weekend as something with my wife. Ended up being her graduation reunion from high school that she was helping plan. It's the only reason we were going to go, because she was helping plan it, but ended up not being able to go to that either, and had a memorial for her grandfather. And so just kind of this year with those two shows just didn't work out for me. And so now it's like, all right, January 31st, 2025, I will finally be at the peak knife event that I've always wanted to be at. And it's kind of one of those other, bucket list, checks that I can put on there. And it's just like I said, this whole experience since 2018 for me has been such just a blur of everything with the production stuff. And then we moved houses and building the shop and knife shows, getting an award and being recognized, and realizing that most businesses do not do very well in their first 5 years. They're not making money in the first 5 years. It's just a general rule of thumb in business. And me being able to have said I made money in like year 2 of a business is mind blowing to me.
Definitely. Awesome. That's for me, as a customer and as a fan, especially as a fan, that's so awesome to hear, because for my own, I know how much effort it takes to have the idea and the time it consumes to push the idea from start to finish is such a huge amount. And then getting paid by so much love and open arms, winning awards or the award at the first show, this has had to be such more wind into your sails, right? This had to push you through this will push you, I think, through the next decade or something of knife making.
Yeah, and like I said early on, I was like, I'm almost 10 years into this, and stuff like that is really what keeps businesses going, and individuals like me, just it keeps my motivation up. And then it's the thing that I look at is like going to these shows and like talking to people and stuff. That's, my wife almost views it as like a vacation for me. It is kind of a vacation and a recharge, because I am working, I am making money. Those are not bad things, especially coming home with money. That's always a good thing. But seeing like-minded people, friends that are other makers, collectors that I've become friends with, new collectors, and then just seeing the excitement of people handling my work, especially somebody that's followed me for years on Instagram and finally was able to make it to a show, finally got able to handle one of my customs, and how excited they are just to hold a knife. A lot of people look at it like, a knife, you're a knife maker. Like, it's just, you get these. I had a lady this last weekend to the show look at my new Yeager bar, the pry bar. I mean, it's a full grade 5 titanium machined in house. It's a $200 pry bar. So she walks by and it's got inlays in it, carbon fiber inlays, micarta inlays, whatever, and just she walked by and looked at it. It was just like, why? But then there's people in the industry that see it. Yeah, and it's like, why would somebody spend their money on that? And then it's, other people would walk up the same last weekend, and it was that CanCon event. So it's essentially a gun show that they put a knife show in the middle of. Gun people and knife people they're kind of the same people, but typically we spend our money on one or the other. And so seeing gun guys come by and look at stuff that they didn't even realize there were knives that were this expensive, or that people made this stuff on their own property, in their own house, in their own shop, was really cool too. Just seeing people be like, dang, you made that? And then, like I said, seeing other guys that have been following me for years saying, man, I'm really excited to finally get to hold this and touch something that you created. And, I've become used to it because obviously I'm the one making them all day.
Sure.
And, it's every day for me. It's normal for me. But I do realize it's not normal for everybody. And so whenever somebody gets that excited about it, I do my best to, match their excitement level and just whatever questions they got, talk to them about it, chat it up with them. Because like we were talking about too, it's, you're buying the maker as much as you're buying the knife. And if you're an asshole and you don't want to talk to them, or you just ignore them and you spend time talking to your table buddy there, your friend that's with you, or somebody else that walks up, I'd try my best not to do that, because I know these people spend a lot of money. They traveled a long way sometimes, and to see you, I mean, maybe just you. And so I think it's, out of respect, you got to give, I think those people deserve that time.
Oh, yeah. For my last question, it's always the same question again.
Yeah.
Brian Brown knives in 3 words.
Brian Brown knives is 3 words.
That doesn't count, my man.
That's tough. I'm not good at stuff like this. I should have asked Chat GPT. Came up with an answer for me. I think would have to be something along the lines of like I was talking about, having all these different price points. So like like availability, accessibility. I want any walk of life to be able to afford one of my knives. Obviously it's kind of cliche, but quality. I don't put anything out there that I am not 100% happy with. I look at my old knives, they suck compared to what I make now, but at the time that was my best work. And I firmly believe that at the time it was my best work. And so, and just, I mean, mirroring that, I guess, heart, because obviously if hopefully people can tell from videos like this that I've done, or if they've never seen a video or heard me talk about my life and just the world, that I have a true passion and heart for what I do. And I do it because I love it, and that just makes it even better, but also doing it because people love seeing it. And you get to a certain point, and this might be a little off topic, but the whole social media stuff, that's the way for me to share my art with the world. But you do get tired of having to do that all the time after working all day and making something all day, and then trying to spend the time to make a video and stuff. And that's what all these platforms want these days, are videos. It's hard, but especially these days with like Instagram, where nobody sees it. I say nobody. Oh, yeah. That's, not to get on the high horse of that stuff, but realizing that people love seeing what goes on in the shop still kind of gives me more motivation to want to do these videos and take time out of my day, like talking with you right now and stuff. When I could be just over there working on a knife for this next show, but I think stuff like this is just as important, because the fans, the customers, get to learn more about me, and hopefully, with stuff like this, it ends up turning into somebody that wants to support me.
Oh, yeah.
Because they see my love for it, my passion for it, and I truly care for the people that buy them.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
definitely. If there's someone out there who didn't get that over the past 1 hour 50-ish,
yeah.
I don't know, man.
So, and like I said, that's why I like doing this kind of stuff. I take time to try to um, do these when I can. It is hard. I usually do them at night, but having the shop now, it's easy to keep the kids out, shoot them away, and I can come down here and do these videos and stuff now versus where I had to do them in my house before or in the garage. And but I love what I do. I hope it comes across that way.
Oh, definitely. It definitely does, yeah. After these 1 hour 50, we just came across that that line.
Talk a lot.
But I really enjoyed having you here.
Yes, I've enjoyed it as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was listening and enjoying all the stuff you just explained and told us. And I think, just as I just said, if there's someone out there who didn't get that it's your passion and you are working with full heart and emotions on these products you make, I think they didn't listen. For me, it's a joy having you here.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be able to talk to, like I said, doing this and me just being a little Mississippi guy, and I'm just one little random person at my house in a shop, and then talking with somebody on the other side of the world, and it's you're about to go to sleep, and
definitely. But I have to say, cool. The honor is mine, because since I got my first Yeager back in 2021, I guess.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of your knife making company, not to say brand.
That's okay. You can whatever you want to call it.
And I enjoy following you on Instagram, and for everyone out there, follow Brian on Instagram. Give him a follow in his newsletter to stay informed about all the new cool stuff he's about to release.
Yep.
Brian, I have to say, it was my pleasure to have you on my podcast.
Tim, appreciate it.
Sure thing. Every time again, it's a joy talking with you and listening to you.
Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
Oh no, hell no. Definitely not.
I do want to say one thing about the newsletter. I've been pretty lax on not doing that for years. But I do have a guy helping me with social media and newsletter type stuff now, just so I can try to focus on what I need to focus on, and then he can help, do posts here and there. But he's really been a big asset for me, and he's not, in my Facebook group acting like he's me or anything like that. I'm still behind. I still approve everything. Very few things that he posts that I didn't actually do myself.
Okay.
But the newsletter is becoming more important with how social media is these days. We're working on trying to get on a schedule of at least bi-monthly, so two newsletters a month, just trying to keep people updated. I would only do it for products, but now I'm trying to do it like, hey, here's the next show I'm going to be at. Here's what's coming down the pipeline type stuff. Hey, these dealers have these knives in stock, because I do get random questions on stuff like that. Who's got a Raptor in stock? So little stuff like that, because I hate emails. I hate seeing an email from a company every other day. So I don't want to do that, but I think it's becoming more important these days to send out those emails and keep them short and sweet and not too many. And so I promise I don't send out random emails constantly, boring. But yeah, Brian Brown Knives on my website. You just Google it. It should pull up the website. And then I have a subscribe page on there. Or what's even better is if you go buy something, you can subscribe that way.
So yeah, all the links where you can check out Brian's work are in the description of this episode. So give him a follow, check it out. And at this point, I have to say, see you guys. Brian, I wish you all the best. I hope we talk soon.
Sir, good talking with you.
And now for everyone out there, have a good time. Don't let your head down for too long. Push through, stay tough, and have a good time. See ya. Ciao, ciao.
Take care.